Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 3 2017 NFL predictions. Well, this week for the Fanatic, it was a much better week in terms of my picks. Definitely for straight up. Well, against the spread, I ended up doing about the same. So, I'll take that for right now. Through the first 2 weeks, this is my second year doing against the spread. And, where I'm at with that in terms of picking, I'm okay with, even though I'd like to start having an improvement this week and it's not hovering around the same. So in terms of my picks, last week I went straight up. I went 12-4, and against the spread I went 500. So now overall for the year I am 20-11 straight up and 16-15 against the spread. So I will take the 20-11 straight up record. That is 64.5%. Through 2 weeks. I think since I've been doing my picks for the last several years, I think that's the highest percentage I've started out for a year. So I'm hoping it's a good trend that can continue to go up instead of going down, because I hope I haven't peaked too early. And against the spread, I'll take an above 500 record through 2 weeks. Last year, if for everybody that was watching my videos, they I was just above 500 against the spread by the end of the season. So I will very happily take being above 500 to start out the against the spread season this year, though it is only one game. So my goal is for this year to at least hit 60% against the spread. That's a lofty goal, but we still have a lot of weeks, so I'm hoping that if I can see games and see the lines, that they will that I can start improving that record. And I also want to say again, I will put the website where I get my lines for the games in the description, so anybody that wants to see updated lines from the time I do my video, they can do that. And good luck to everybody there. But what a great week 2 in the NFL. So many teams came out impressive, so many teams came out struggling, and you kind of start seeing who are the good teams, who are the great teams, and who are the bad teams. Like let's take last night, for example. The Detroit Lions showed that, hey, they are a pretty solid, consistent team. Matt Stafford played decent. He was playing against a tough Giants defense, but he only committed 1 turnover, and he was able to get 2 touchdowns. Eric Ebron got his first touchdown in the second game. Last year, he only had 1 touchdown through 13 games last year, so good for him there. The running game did well. They had the big punt return by Agnew. I think it was Jamal Agnew. But for the Giants, Eli Manning got sacked 5 times. He got hit 6 times. And for the Giants, that is the first time in franchise history they've lost their first 2 games by 14-plus points. And also, Eli Manning has the second most active 0-2 starts in their career. The only one that has more 0-2 starts is Drew Brees. And finally, in that game, Eli Manning, he had a turnover for the 141st game of his career. That's the second most for an active quarterback behind Drew Brees, who's had a turnover in 147 games. So I thought that was interesting. I was impressed with Kansas City. An all-around solid performance by Alex Smith. Travis Kelce had a big game. The defense played well. They got a couple big turnovers. And Kareem Hunt, another 2-touchdown game. He had another 100-plus yard scrimmage game, so very impressive over there. The Philadelphia's defense, for the most part, through 3 quarters, did well. I feel bad for their kicker, Jake Elliott, who missed a 28-yard field goal to end the half, which could have been crucial in turning momentum. I want to congratulate the Raiders and Broncos for their dominant wins. I know the Raiders played the Jets, but still, they handled their business. While for Denver, that was a 25-point win. That's the largest win they've had in the series against the Cowboys. And that means, and they've also won 6 straight against the Cowboys in this series. So good for them. And I think if you look at the AFC West, that's the best division in football. And one final little tidbit I just want to mention, my little early monologue here. I do want to say for Atlanta, what a spectacular game they had. They opened at a brand new stadium in style. They put up 34 points on the Packers, and they've averaged 37 points in the last 3 games against the Packers over this calendar year. And that just goes to show you as well that the Green Bay Packers defense was helped by the Seattle offensive line. And the Green Bay Packers defense is not as good as everybody thought they were going to be after the week 1 against Seattle. And if you need any more proof about how bad Seattle's offensive line is, just watch the Niners game. They were awful, and they almost blew a game against the Niner team at home that they shouldn't have made that close. Alright, so time for my picks and thoughts on each game. Let's see. Sorry, I have to scroll down here. Alright, here we go. Alright, so first up, this Thursday, when the 1-1 Los Angeles Rams go to the 0-2 San Francisco 49ers, the LA Rams are 2-point favorites in this game. I like the LA Rams here, -2, and the LA Rams straight up. Then the next game, across the pond, across the English Channel, the 2-0 Baltimore Ravens will go to the 1-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. The Baltimore Ravens are 4-point favorites in this game. I like Baltimore here, -4, and Baltimore straight up. Then the next game, the 2-0 Denver Broncos go to the 1-1 Buffalo Bills. The Denver Broncos are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Denver here, -3, and Denver straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 New Orleans Saints go to the 2-0 Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers are 5.5-point favorites in this game. I like Carolina here, -5.5, and Carolina straight up. And then the next game, when the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 0-2 Chicago Bears, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 7.5-point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh here, -7.5, and I like Pittsburgh here straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Atlanta Falcons go to the 2-0 Detroit Lions, the Atlanta Falcons are 3-point favorites in this game. I actually like here for the upset, and I'll explain why in a little bit longer. I'm going to take the Detroit Lions here, +3, and the Detroit Lions straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 Cleveland Browns go to the 0-2 Indianapolis Colts, this game is a pick'em, and I'm going to take the Indianapolis Colts in this situation, both against the spread and straight up. I'll explain more of that later. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 1-1 Minnesota Vikings, this game does not have a spread, so with that being said, I'm going to treat this game as a pick'em, and in both ways, so I'm going to take Tampa Bay here against the spread, and Tampa Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 Houston Texans go to the 1-1 New England Patriots, the New England Patriots here are 13-point favorites in this game. I like New England here, -13, and New England straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-0 Miami Dolphins go to the 0-2 New York Jets, the Dolphins are 6-point favorites in this game. I like Miami here, -6, and Miami straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-2 New York Giants go to the 1-1 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles here are 5-point favorites in this game. I like Philadelphia here, -5, and Philadelphia straight up. Then the next game, when the 1-1 Seattle Seahawks go to the 1-1 Tennessee Titans, the Tennessee Titans here are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Tennessee here, -3, and Tennessee straight up. And then the next game, when the 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals go to the 1-1 Green Bay Packers, the Green Bay Packers are 9-point favorites in this game. I like Green Bay here, -9, and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Kansas City Chiefs go to the 0-2 Los Angeles Chargers, the Kansas City Chiefs here are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Kansas City here, -3, and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, when the 2-0 Oakland Raiders go to the 1-1 Washington Redskins, the Oakland Raiders are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Oakland here, -3, and Oakland straight up. And finally, for the Monday night game, when the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys go to the 1-1 Arizona Cardinals, the Dallas Cowboys are 3-point favorites in this game. I like Dallas here, -3, and Dallas straight up. Alright, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Rams at the Niners. I'm taking the Los Angeles Rams here just because I've seen the Rams play their first 2 games. They looked fantastic against a Colts team. They did they handled their business and looked much more impressive than anybody thought. And in the Redskins game, look, I was surprised at how bad the Redskins' run defense was. They gave up a 61-yard burst to Chris Thompson, which I believe was his career-high rush. And they just also couldn't really stop Cousins from converting third downs and moving the chains. Jameson Crowder would make a play. Vernon Davis would make a play. Ryan Grant caught a nice touchdown that basically sealed the game. But at the same time, the one thing I've liked out of the Rams the first 2 games is they've been much more competitive. They've been a more balanced football team. when you look at the Rams, they are 10th in points, and they are number 3 in pass defense, and they're which is impressive. Though, like I said, with the Chris Thompson run, the Achilles heel for the Rams so far have been their run defense. They are the second worst run defense in the NFL. I've also been impressed with how the Rams have been kind of using more weapons. Sammy Watkins has made some nice plays. Todd Gurley looks like himself. He had a 2-touchdown game. Robert Woods. This tight end, Gerald Everett, has an incredible yards per catch. They should put him in more plays. He's averaging 34.5 yards per catch. That's insane. I know it's only 3 catches, but still, that they should use him for more plays because obviously he's shown with the times he touches the ball, he can make plays. But with that being said, when you look at the Niners are only with the Bengals as the only 2 teams that have not scored an offensive touchdown all year. But again, the one thing I will give the Niners, after the embarrassment they had against Carolina, against the Seattle offensive line, they made that game incredibly close, and one of the biggest reasons was Carlos Hyde. He ran for the second highest total of rush yards in his career, and I thought, the defense played pretty well against a battered Seattle offensive line, and they showed a lot of heart against a team in a tough place to play that they had lost for the last 5 games by at least 13, 20 points. And also, it was the first time in Niners history that the team could not score an offensive touchdown in their first 2 games. That's the first time in franchise history that's ever happened. But yeah, the reason why I'm taking the Rams, they've been more impressive. They have a more complete offense. And I believe they're going to use a lot of the motivation from last year because the last time they went into San Francisco, they got shut out, I believe, 20-0 or 28-0. And it was just an absolute embarrassment. And I know for most of those players on that team, they don't want to go through that again. Aaron Donald, I remember getting ejected from that game. And I just look at the Rams and say, Sean McVay has them in a good spot where against a Niner team that has shown some flashes, they haven't shown as much consistency in offense and defense, unlike the Niners. And also for the Rams, they're trying to go out some history here. The last time the LA Rams won in San Francisco as the LA Rams, keywords, was November 25th, 1990. So they've gone, I believe, 4 or 5 straight seasons as the Los Angeles Rams and have not been able to beat the Niners. Unbelievable, but I thought that was something, pretty amazing there. But I'm taking the LA Rams, more consistent on offense and defense, have looked more competitive. And I trust the Rams can score on the Niners defense. I don't know if the Niners can score on the Rams defense. So that's why I like the LA Rams -2 and the LA Rams straight up. The next game, Baltimore at Jacksonville. For the Baltimore Ravens, I do have to say this, our defense, through the first 2 games, and competition permitting, looks like the 2000 Ravens defense are one of our better defensive units we've had in a very long time. We are only the second team in the last 25 years to force at least 5 turnovers in back-to-back games. The other team that did that was the 2015 New York Jets. I'm hoping that we don't have the same outcome like the Jets did, where we have a good record, but we choke at the end, and we miss the playoffs. Shout out to Logan Schiff. Sorry for your big loss last week against the Raiders. And also, so I love what the defense has done. They've been ball hawks. They've been run stuffing. We've only allowed 1 offensive touchdown through 2 games. So I'm incredibly impressed with that. However, Joe Flacco, with Phillip Rivers not throwing an interception, Joe Flacco does now have the longest streak of consecutive games with an interception at 8. And I just look at the Ravens offense and, Buck Allen made some decent plays. Alex Collins made some decent plays even though he fumbled. But then there were some points in the games where the Ravens just had wide open, busted coverages, which irritated me because I'm like, we shouldn't have that. If that defense is that good, we shouldn't have been put in situations where our defense had to make picks to bail us out of those situations. And then on the offensive line, we lost Marshall Yanda, which is significant. He's our best offensive lineman. Now we've lost Alex Lewis. We keep losing all these great players to injury, and I just don't know how many more guys we can just kind of plug and play and see how long it can hold up before the injuries start catching up to us. Fortunately, however, we are playing the Jacksonville Jaguars that after they donned themselves Saxonville, the Titans said, we're doing some construction on Saxonville, and we're making it Titan Boulevard. Because the Titans instead of getting sacked 10 times, Mariota only got sacked twice. And Blake Bortles had another 2 interceptions. One was off Marquise Lee's hands. And by the end of the game, they were dominated so much they scored 2 garbage time touchdowns. But in those touchdowns, Leonard Fournette became the first Jacksonville rookie running back to have scored a rushing touchdown in his first 2 games. So good for him. But the key thing about Jacksonville that's so bad is that they are a horrible home team. Since 2012, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 10-31 in their last 41 home games. But amazingly, though, they do actually okay in London. They're 2-3 in London. And to me, you know, I think playing in London, they feel better about that. So I think this game is going to be a lot more competitive than maybe people think. I think this Baltimore offensive line is going to get a tough test from that Jacksonville front with a lot of loaded talent, though they lost Malik Jackson to an injury, so I do want to see how that goes. But when you have the #1 defense in terms of turnovers and 12th best rushing defense, I feel the Ravens, they just have the experience and the talent to just overpower Jacksonville defensively to win another one of these kind of games. And we need this, because as a Ravens fan, I will mention to all Ravens fans out there, this was very eerily similar to what happened last year. We started up 3-0. We beat the Bills, we beat the Browns, and we beat the Jags. We beat the Bengals, just put the Bengals in front of the Bills, and we beat the Browns and the Jags. Okay, fortunately, they were not as close games, okay? So you can give the defense that. They're more decisive games. But when we play Pittsburgh and Oakland the next 2 weeks, that'll be our true test to see how we really are. But I'm going to take Baltimore here. More experienced team, better defense. And I can't trust Blake Bortles in this situation going against that defense. And with no Allen Robinson, you saw how inept the offense was. It's going to be another one of those kind of close days offensively for Jacksonville, though I do not expect the Ravens to put up 37 points. So that's all I like. Baltimore here, -4. And Baltimore straight up. Next game, Broncos over Bills. I want to congratulate the Denver Broncos on a spectacular performance against the Dallas Cowboys. Like I mentioned before, you know, it was a 25-point win, largest against the Cowboys in the series history. Trevor Siemian had 4 total touchdowns. He now leads the league in passing touchdowns with 6. He has 7 total with the run rushing he had. And he looked absolutely fantastic. C.J. Anderson, what a game he had. He had the highest amount of rushing yards for him since Week 13 of the 2014 season, and his 3rd highest total of his career. And I also want to congratulate the Aqib Talib for getting his 10th career pick 6. That puts him now 3rd all-time in terms of pick 6 return touchdowns. So congratulations to Aqib there. But that was just a smothering defense. Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, Roby, Harris, Aqib, they were just all suffocating that entire Denver defense. Pecco looked decent, and that Denver defense just smothered the Dallas offensive line in ways I did not expect Dallas to be smothered like that, especially with Zeke and Dak in the game. They are facing a tough defensive challenge in Buffalo. Buffalo, the one thing I was impressed with, even though they ended up losing the game, Buffalo's defense is a very good unit. They had 6 sacks on Cam Newton, which is the highest amount of sacks they've had since Week 12 of the 2014 season when they played the New York Jets and beat them 38-3. I also want to congratulate LaShawn McCoy. He became the 4th active player with 3,000 receiving yards at running back. The other 3 active running backs that have that are Darren Sproles, Matt Forte, and Frank Gore. However, the problem was I love the defense. The offense was pitiful and not good. Buffalo scored their fewest points in a game since Week 5 of the 2012 season. They played San Francisco, I believe, and they lost 45-3. And the Broncos have won 6 of the last 8 games. So when you look at this game, I think Buffalo's defense will provide a much tougher challenge to Dallas. However, I think Trevor Siemian can do enough with his weapons around him to score enough points that the Denver defense, if the Panthers defense can hold the Bills to 3 points, the Broncos defense sure can more do that. And Denver should be able to win the game in a more low-scoring kind of like I think they said this year one of their slogans was if they can get 17 points, they should be able to win the game. And I think Denver can score 17 to 20 points on this Buffalo Bills defense, and that should be enough for the defense to carry them home to get to a 3-0 start. So that's why I like Denver here. Denver -3 and Denver straight up. Next game, Saints at Panthers. The New Orleans Saints, they're at a horrible crossroads right now. They are 0-2 for the 4th straight year, I believe. Yeah, for the 4th straight season, they are 0-2. And the biggest problem they've had is that defense. 48% of their games over the last 3 years, their defense has given up 28+ points. And I like Drew Brees. I think Drew Brees is a Hall of Famer. He is the greatest Saint of all time. But with that offense, the way it's going, they really can't run the ball. Adrian Peterson, one of their prized possessions, only has 14 rushes for 44 yards. Michael Thomas has done absolute squat. Brandon Coleman, their third-string receiver, ended up having a decent game, but he got 2 touchdowns around garbage time. And the offense just isn't clicking. They don't have any other receiving weapons. Willie Snead's still suspended, so he's going to be out. He's going to end his suspension this week against the Panthers. And I just look at the Saints and say, it is time for Sean Payton to go. This team is awful. They're not good defensively, and the offense is just sputtering along here. And I just think it's time for Sean Payton and Drew Brees to go. It's sad to see Drew Brees play like this, and it's sad to see him lose like this. But they're not going anywhere. I actually would consider trying to trade Drew Brees because it's not fair to him to have to go through this week after week after week and then have him here say, we'll keep pushing through it. Unfortunately, New Orleans fans and Drew Brees and Sean Payton, you're not pushing through this. You're going to be the worst team in the NFC South, and you could very easily have a top 10 pick in the draft again. But also, I think the Panthers, their offensive line just had issues, like I mentioned in the last game. Cam Newton got sacked 6 times, and he got hit a few extra times, and they lost their best receiving threat in tight end Greg Olsen, who has led the team in receiving yards over the last 4 seasons. He will not be out for the year. It's a 6 to 8 week injury, but that's a significant blow to the Panthers offense. However, when you look at the Panthers defense, they're the only defense to not give up a touchdown at all through the first 2 games. So they're the number 1 defense in terms of points and yards. And if you needed a offensive remedy, just like with New England when they played KC, play the New Orleans Saints because they will let you run wide open through secondaries, have blown coverages, and have no guys that can cover any of their receivers. It should be an interesting game because I do want to see how the Panthers offense, because if you look at this is probably the weakest offense just in terms of how, the team is that New Orleans got to play all year. But just knowing how bad the Saints defense is, I expect Kelvin Shepard, McCaffrey, Stewart, Curtis Samuel, Kelvin Benjamin to have decent games because they're playing the Saints defense, who love just letting wide open receivers just run down the field. So those are all the reasons why I'm taking the Carolina Panthers -5.5. Carolina straight up. Next game, Steelers at Bears. This is just fairly easy. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they truly got to play the Sam Bradford-less Minnesota Vikings, and I think that did contribute to a part of the Vikings offense. However, I'm not going to complain about Sam Bradford not playing because I do not like that man as a quarterback, but I digress. But when you look at how Pittsburgh played, they played pretty decently. Martavius Bryant scored his first touchdown in a game since Week 13 of the 2015 season, so congratulations to him. Juju Smith-Schuster caught his first touchdown, and Le'Veon Bell had 87 yards on the ground. I know, like through the 3 quarters, they pretty much stuffed them up. But still, 87 yards against the Vikings defense, 70, 90 yards was kind of the range I thought that he needed to run in order to win the game. And also, I do want to give Pittsburgh's defense credit. You can definitely put the competition factor into this, but Pittsburgh's defense right now is ranked 6th in points and 3rd in yards. So, again, I think with the T.J. Watts, with the Joe Haydens, with the J.J. Wilcox, with the Sean Davises, they have a decent defense, and they're showing that, they're having a quality defense with the explosive offense in order to be a, true Super Bowl contender and a threat to the New England Patriots. Unfortunately for them, I think their defensive stats are going to basically stay around the same or do better because they get to play the Chicago Bears. That after the great Week 1 performance where they almost knocked off the NFC champs, Chicago gave you a really bad reality check and said to you, yeah, we're still the Chicago Bears. Mike Glennon the Bears had 4 turnovers. They've had 4 turnovers in back-to-back games against the Bucs, which is absolutely sad, but they also had Mike Glennon as their starting quarterback. Who, since he's been the starting quarterback since 2013, he is 31st in completion percentage. He's 34th, I believe, in yards per attempt, and he's like 33rd in record. He's 5-15 as a starting quarterback. And Mike Glennon's a disaster. And for the Bears, they only have Tariq Cohen as their bright spot on all. Well, Cohen and Howard, the duo running backs, they really have no receivers to throw to. And you could blame the injuries for this, but I still don't think even if they had Cameron Meredith and Kevin White and one of their guards, that they would have won the game. And they've also lost 9 straight September games. So this is one of those things where you just look at Pittsburgh all around. Better quarterback, better line, better runner, better receivers, better defense, more experienced coach. This should just be an easy game for the Steelers to win. The Bears, might be more competitive because Atlanta, Pittsburgh, they're in Chicago, so, maybe Chicago has some home mojo there. But just knowing how Mike Glennon played and how bad he is, I think it's almost time for the Trubisky era to start in Chicago. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh here just for that reason. Pittsburgh just has a farly superior, better team. And Chicago's lost 9 straight September games. And with a Steeler team that's pretty much looked flawless in most ways, defensively, and kind of decent offensively throughout, against the horrible Bears defense, the Steelers should win this easily going away. Sounds like Pittsburgh are minus 7.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. Then the next game, the Falcons at the Lions. The Atlanta Falcons looked fantastic on Sunday night. They have now won 11 of the last 12 games against the NFC, and that includes 3 straight games against the Green Bay Packers. And also, like I said before, I'll mention again, the Atlanta Falcons have averaged 37 points per game against the Packers, which is highly impressive. And they have had 6 defensive touchdowns since last year. That is the most in the NFL in that span. And also I will give Matt Ryan his credit. He has the longest active streak of throwing a touchdown. He's had 21 straight games with a touchdown pass thrown. And then, when you look at the defense, it was a 34-7 game. And I thought the Packers, whenever the Falcons now, they start, being soft and they start blowing, they start giving up easy touchdowns. And, it was 34-23 with about 5 minutes to go. I'm going, wait a minute here. Are the Falcons going to do it again? But fortunately, they got a big stop, and then their offense just basically took over at the end of the game there. And they stopped that. So good for them in that aspect. And then when you look at the Lions had a nice, solid game. Jamal Agnew had an 88-yard kick return. They snapped the Giants' 6-game home winning streak. Matt Stafford got his 4th win, I believe, in late games, in primetime late-night games. He was going into the game with having the worst primetime record in the NFL as a starting quarterback. And they did not trail in the 4th quarter for the first time in a while, or for only the 2nd time the last year, and they were able to win the game. So good job for the Lions all around. And Ezekiel Ansah also had the Monday night record for most sacks in a Monday night game, I believe. In a Monday night game, I believe, with 3. I'm not exactly sure about that, but I thought I heard that on the telecast last night. But here is why I'm taking the Lions. Because I know I'm going up against history here. Matt Stafford, 5-43 against winning teams. And the Atlanta Falcons should have a winning record. Here is why. The Atlanta Falcons' Vic Beasley, who led the league in sacks last year with 20.5, has a strained hamstring, and he'll miss a month of games. They also lost linebacker Courtney Upshaw, who's a decent role player. But the one thing I'm going to trust the Lions here is that Lions offensive line, even though they have Greg Robinson, who's a bust and who looked awful again last night. I'm going to trust that the Detroit Lions offense, with Stafford, with Galladay, with Golden Tate, with Marvin Jones, with the two running backs in Abdullah and Riddick, they should be able to put up more points on a Falcons defense and play better compared to the Bears at home. Because just remember, 2 weeks ago, the Bears at home almost, if Jordan Howard doesn't drop a ball, they beat the Atlanta Falcons, and we were all wondering Atlanta's on that Super Bowl hangover. This is the difference. I trust the Detroit Lions in this situation. They have the better quarterback. They have better receivers. They have a better defense. And with Atlanta, I do not expect them to generate that much of a pass rush, because if you're only going to have DeAndre Campbell really, try to put rush on the passer, I feel confident that their line can stop him. And if Stafford has all day to throw at home, they should be able to win the game. But I'd be surprised if Atlanta won the game. Not at all. I think Atlanta, look, they have Trufant, they have Keanu, they have Alford, they have a decent secondary. But with the pass rush not being there, I just don't see how Hagman or Grady Jarrett or Brian Poole or Deion Jones can do that, because that's not their roles. Unless they put Deion Jones as more of a pass rusher. Deion Jones is more of the Bobby Wagner, more of the Levante David, the athletic linebacker of that defense. I just don't see the Falcons generating enough pass rush on Stafford to rattle him. And I'm going to take that with the home field advantage as the two biggest reasons why I believe the Detroit Lions will win this game. It should be a great game. And in a week with a lot of lopsided, easy games to pick, this is one of the games that I would recommend everybody, if you have time. If you can't watch it, look at the highlights or follow it, because it's going to be a great game. So that's why I like Detroit here, +3, and Detroit straight up. Next game, Browns at Colts. You feel bad for the Browns. Corey Coleman broke his hand again, basically in the same spot. And you look at Jamie Collins, he suffered concussion. And the Browns, they just, after such a great game against Pittsburgh, and I know they're a young team, they looked worse against us. We have 5 turnovers. Deshaun Kaiser goes out with a migraine. And Kevin Hogan comes in. And Kevin Hogan actually played better. He actually played better in the span that he was in the game. However, he did have some help with busted coverage, like I mentioned earlier. But to me, it's like one of those things with this game where the only reason why I'm taking Indy, there's 2 reasons. One, injuries. With no Corey Coleman, and you're relying on Kenny Britt and Duke Johnson, or their tight end Seth something, I forget his last name, and would possibly no Jamie Collins. I just don't see that Browns team being that effective against the Colts team that, with Jacoby Brissett going up against the talented Arizona team, they were just one bad throw away or one mistake away from possibly beating the Arizona Cardinals, which should not have happened. That should not have happened. And see, to me, when I look at when I look at this game, like I said, and also it's just home field advantage, I saw more out of the Colts with Jacoby Brissett, who now has won the backup job, in my opinion, for the Indianapolis Colts for the rest of the year. You can cut Scott Tolzien today. Or, they should have done it yesterday. I liked what I saw. The defense was more active. They were making plays. They caused turnovers. Frank Gore got a touchdown. And from what I saw out of Jacoby Brissett with that experience and with the talent around him, that's not as banged up as, Cleveland is, I'm going to take that in the home field advantage in order for the Colts to win this game. But I'd be surprised if Cleveland won this game. Not at all. Cleveland's had the more experience. They've been, building through this more. And they're, in a process where they have more talent and more depth and youth at most positions. But just with the injuries and just how the Colts played, I'm convinced enough in this game they should be able to win it. Though I am going against the grain here. Andrew Luck is 43-27 as the Colts starter. The other Colts quarterbacks in that span, and there have been 3, Matt Hasselbeck, Scott Tolzien, and now Jacoby Brissett, they are 5-6 in those 11 games. But also I'm going to go history here. The Colts have won 7 of the last 8 games against the Browns. And I think this might be the best chance for the Browns to end that streak. But I'm going to take the home field advantage. I'm going to take Brissett, what I saw, the positives out of it. And that should be enough to beat a banged-up, young Cleveland Browns team that just still looks erratic the same. So that's why I like Indy here in a pick'em against the spread and straight up. Next game, Bucks at Vikings, like I mentioned before, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 8 turnovers against Chicago. Last 2 games of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they forced 8 turnovers on the Chicago Bears. That was actually the most turnovers they had in the game since the game against the Chicago Bears back last year. And in those 2 games, they've outscored Chicago 65-17. I thought Winston had a solid game. Jacquizz Rodgers did his job, and that Tampa Bay defense looks fantastic. Mike Smith's done a great job, and if Mike Smith has another good year, I would not be surprised, and I would be okay with Mike Smith getting another head coaching opportunity. He showed you what he could do in Atlanta, that he is a good head coach. He's a good head coach that can, build a roster, provide confidence in a defense, and if the offense can do well enough with talent, he can manage it. He's probably never going to win Super Bowl, but he's done well enough as the defensive coordinator for Tampa over the last couple of years to, if a team offered him a head coaching job with his resume from Atlanta, I'd be more than willing to give him another opportunity. And then when you look at the Vikings, Sam Bradford, boy, that was hard for Vikings fans to watch. And this is the problem you've had when you have Teddy Bridgewater on the pup, and you have Sam Bradford who's had knee problems basically his whole career. They said Sam Bradford has a bone bruise, and that could be a couple weeks. But if Mike Zimmer said he was okay, and just knowing what I know of Sam Bradford and just knowing with the knee injury, they should have tried to give him a knee shot before the game, or maybe a protective knee brace. And honestly, I would have asked Sam Bradford to play because Mike Zimmer's job's on the line here, and with games that they have coming up, he may not end up in Minnesota that long along with Sam. And just in my personal opinion, I think Sam Bradford was being a bit of a wuss for not going out there with that game. If it was just a bone bruise, and it was a bone bruise, there was no breaks, no damage, he should have gone out there and played. But Sam Bradford with his last knees, doesn't surprise me that he put a rain check and tapped out. And so again, we'll see how it goes. I think they said they're putting another injection in, or they're putting an injection today or tomorrow. And if how that goes up, that will provide a status. I think he will play, and that will help the Vikings. But with that Tampa defense the way it is, Minnesota's offensive line should hold up better. But I'm not sold on the Minnesota offense doing that well. Even if Dalvin Cook had another good game, he's actually now ran for more yards in his first 2 games compared to Adrian Peterson. So, good for him. Even though I felt bad for all the fantasy owners that had him when Chris Ham stole the 1-yard touchdown run. And I do want to say for the Vikings, you wasted $5 million. You gave Latavius Murray $5 million, and he's had like 6 rushes for 15, 16 yards. That's pathetic for $5 million. If you knew you were going to draft Dalvin Cook, you should have never picked up Murray in the first place. You should have let Murray try to find another role on another team instead of just putting $5 million in him and just letting Dalvin run everywhere. So, I'm going to take Tampa here just for those reasons of you don't know the status of Bradford. Even if Bradford plays, he's not going to be 100%. And I just trust that Tampa defense enough to provide more of a challenge to the Vikings offensive line. And I expect Winston, with the weapons he has, to make some plays against the Vikings defense that showed against a talented and depth-filled receiving core that they can have their lapses and bad moments. So that's why I like Tampa Bay here in a pick'em against the spread and straight up. And I will put that spread once I find it in the description, just for everybody out there. Next game, Texans and Patriots. Wow, that game was ugly to watch. But I do want to give Deshaun Watson his credit. What a way to celebrate his 22nd birthday with a win over the Cincinnati Bengals. He had I believe, the longest rushing touchdown by a rookie quarterback in NFL history with the 49-yard touchdown run. And he's the first Texans rookie quarterback to win his first start in franchise history. So congratulations to him there. I thought the defense was fantastic. Jadeveon Clowney had a huge play on John Ross after John Ross fumbled the ball and Clowney ran it back, about 60 yards. Even though I felt bad for the Bengals, with John Ross getting benched after that. Marvin Lewis should have learned from Andy Reid with Kareem Hunt, and he should have let him play and continue to play because John Ross did nothing the rest of the game. But this is one of those things where the Texans and the Patriots, look, Brady, he was the first, he's the second QB in NFL history to have 400 yards and three plus touchdowns in a game since 40 years old. At 40 years old, he had the highest amount of passing yards for a 40-year-old quarterback, and he had a first in his career by throwing 3 touchdowns in the first quarter of a game. He'd never done that in his career up to that point, so that was surprising to hear as well. But I'm going to take New England here because this series against Bill O'Brien over the last few years, it's been absolutely pathetic. They have been outscored in the 3 games that O'Brien that they played against Belichick with O'Brien by the grand score of 78-22 under O'Brien, and that's with 3 different quarterbacks. And this will be now the 3rd time in a row that O'Brien's had to go to Foxborough, which sucks. And also, when you look at the Texans just defensively, their front 7 is going to be fantastic, and I think they're going to provide a much bigger challenge for the Patriots offense. However, and then you also have Rob Gronkowski, who scored a 69 touchdown, good for him, which I think broke the Patriots all-time record, so congratulations to Gronk there. But with Brady having, Burkhead go out, Gronk has a groin injury, Amendola still has concussion symptoms, Dorsett, I think, went out of the game early, Dante Hightower can miss the game. I think there's going to be too many body blows to realize that this Patriot team is going to have a long year. Fortunately, they have a good schedule. Unfortunately, they're playing a Houston Texans defense that not only lost Jonathan Joseph to a shoulder injury, they lost their other starting quarterback, Kevin Johnson, to an MCL sprain that should take him out 4 to 6 weeks. So, I think that, the Texans should have an easier matchup, but with the Patriots offense, with Tom Brady at home, the last time they were at home, they got embarrassed, and I know Belichick would use it as motivation to tell these guys, let's play against this Texan team the way we should. And just the way the Texans have played against the Patriots, I have no confidence that they should be able to do basically anything, especially with a rookie quarterback. And O'Brien's going into the game now with his 4th different quarterback playing them in as many games. So that's why I like New England here, -13, and New England straight up. Next game, Dolphins at Jets. I want to give the Dolphins credit. They put out a game that I did not expect them to win. And Jay Cutler, a guy that I believe I told all my viewers, was the right choice at quarterback. He was an upgrade over Ryan Tannehill. I will say this. He played like Ryan Tannehill. He was not an upgrade, but he played like him on Sunday in L.A. 24-33, 230 yards, 1 TD. Pretty good, for what they had to do. With Jay Ajayi having 28 carries for 122 yards, that's a good enough game for Cutler to get a win like that. I also want to congratulate Cody Parkey. I can't believe he's on his 3rd team. He's a pretty good kicker, and he showed it on Sunday, kicking, the 3 field goals, including, I believe, the 53-yarder to win the game. And I just, again, the Dolphins had a solid win. Jarvis Landry had 13 receptions for 76 yards. Parker made some nice plays. Thomas made a couple plays. And you look at that Dolphins team and you say, you know what? They're not a bad team. And fortunately, with the game against Tampa being moved, they're in first place in the AFC East right now. And fortunately for them, they're playing the Jets, which have the worst defense in the NFL in terms of points per game, and they have the worst rushing defense in the NFL. And this is just one of those games, again, where the Jets, they've looked somewhat competitive, through, I would say, 5 of the 8 quarters. But there's really been no confidence or any chance of saying the Jets are going to win the game. No. The Raiders and Bills have been basically able to lead games and hold on to those leads. And with this Dolphins team, with the way they are, the way they played the Jets the last couple years, or last year, it wasn't that good. And I expect the same thing to happen again. So, it should be an interesting game. It's a division game, and the Jets, they may come up for another half and make it competitive. But with the Dolphins, with their balanced run attack, with Cutler, being a little more emotional, being a little more relaxed, that should be enough for the Miami Dolphins to win this game, at least by the spread, and go to 2-0. That's why I like Miami here, -6. And Miami straight up. Next game, Eagles over Giants. Carson Wentz lost his first game in September. He was, I believe, 3-0 going into the game, or 4-0. Good for him. And when you look at what the Eagles did, Sproles had a big fumble, which was significant. I mentioned the Jake Elliott 28-yard field goal was a surprise. And I also want to congratulate, Alshon Jeffrey. He had a big touchdown catch. But at the same time, going into KC is incredibly hard to play. And I don't blame them for putting up as good a fight as they did, you know. Or I actually give them a little credit, let me phrase that. Whereas when you look at the Giants, one last thing with the Eagles, LeGarrette Blount has been nothing. He was $1.25 million of a waste. I wouldn't even give LeGarrette Blount 1.25 or 12.5 cents to do what he's done. He's done absolutely nothing for the Eagles in terms of the ground game. And he has one receiving touchdown throughout the year. And I knew that was going to happen because he's not on the Patriots. LeGarrette Blount loses interest if he's not on New England. And it showed. He doesn't care. He's just on there making a paycheck. And if I'm the Eagles, you need to run Corey Clement. Because Sproles is a utility guy. Pumphrey is out. And LeGarrette Blount's washed up and looks disinterested. So, fortunately for the Eagles, and also they lost a couple of big secondary guys. They lost Jalen Watkins and Rodney McLeod, and I believe their injuries, they said they're both hamstring strains and they're going to be out for a couple of weeks. If you pile that on top of losing Ronald Darby to an ankle injury and Sidney Jones to an ACL recovery, that Eagles secondary is in thin shape and rough shape. Fortunately, however, they're playing a Giants team that has no offensive line, where the Eagles' front seven should absolutely kill their line. Their Giants' 6-game home winning streak is snapped. And the Giants, they have the longest streak in the NFL of 8 straight games scoring under 20 points. Odell Beckham, right, he came back from that ankle injury and did absolutely nothing. He had 4 receptions for 36 yards. And you know what, Odell? When you want to be paid the highest player, not quarterback or by position, in the NFL, you're not getting any sympathy from me. You were out there. You looked horrible, and Darius Slay did a good job. Okay? Brandon Marshall looks, discombobulated. He had a couple, opportunities of big catches in the game to make it, to turn some momentum. He couldn't do it. Evan Ingram had a decent game, but one of those touchdowns, he was just running up the field. The Lions completely forgot to ignore him. So, this Giants team, they're like Seattle. I'll put it that way. They're a very loaded, talented offense with a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but their two biggest problem is they can't run the ball, and they don't have an offensive line. And that's showing you that, if you don't have a run game or offensive line, or maybe especially the offensive line, it's going to be a long year in the NFL for you to play. But that's why I'm taking the Eagles. Also, it's a home game. The Eagles have won the last 3 home games against the Giants. And just watching that Giants offense, it's just pitiful. It's sad. It's head-scratching. And I just buy the Eagles here. I think the Eagles offense, Carson Wentz is 4th in the league in passing, 640 yards. He's thrown 5 touchdowns. And he's at least shown he can move the ball. And also their offensive line's pretty good themselves. So I think they're going to, put up a good fight against Giants' defensive line. So that's why I'm taking the Eagles here. Better defensive line, going to generate a lot of pressure. And even though the Eagles have a very bad mismatch in terms of secondary, it's not going to matter if Eli Manning doesn't have time to throw. So that's like Philadelphia here, -5, and Philadelphia straight up. Next game, the Seahawks at the Titans. The Titans here, I'm taking them because Seattle's on the road. And Seattle at home only put up 12 points. Even though, just for fact of record, Seattle scored 12 points in their first home game last year and a 12-10 win over the Miami Dolphins. So, this is, maybe something that, they're slow at first at home. But this is the problem with Seattle once again. Seattle has only scored last year, and I kind of updated my stats. I remember week 1 I put some stats out about Seattle on the road and their struggles. I realized I miscalculated 2 games, and I did some other things, but these are more of the confirmed stats. So, Seattle last year only scored a grand total in 8 road games with 9 offensive touchdowns. Their highest was 3 touchdowns against the Jets, and 3 touchdowns against the Patriots. In 7 of their last 9 road games, they have only been able to score 2 touchdowns, and for the second straight year, they ended up not scoring a touchdown in their first game again. One bright spot, though, was Chris Carson. He had 100 yards from scrimmage against the Niners, and he looks like he should be the number 1 back going forward, with Thomas Rawls' injury and Eddie Lacy just sitting there gaining some LBs and just wasting away. And I guess that's the thing. So the Seahawks got a squeak-out win against the Niners, which should not have happened, and they're playing a Titan team that looked decent against the Jaguars. I mentioned before they only allowed 2 sacks to Jacksonville, where Jacksonville put 10 on Houston last week. And also Mariota threw his first red zone interception. I think he had 33 touchdowns going into the game without a red zone INT. He threw his first one to Telvin Smith on Sunday. But with that being said, when you look at the Titans, the Seattle defensive line is going to be a big challenge, and Mariota is going to probably play the best secondary he's played in his entire career. But with that Titans defense, with the decent players they have, they got the Cyprians, they got the Logan Ryans, they got the Jarrell Caseys, they got the Avery Williamsons, they got the Wesley Woodyards. I think this Titans defense can do enough, and the Titans offense can do enough with the talent they have in order to make enough plays and score enough points. I think they need about 14 to 17, maybe 20 at most, in order to win the game. Because just looking at the Seattle offense with that line on the road, I just have a little confidence. I would love to be wrong because I'm a huge Seattle and Russell Wilson fan, but I'm just going with my instinct here. I've seen enough road games from Seattle over the last 2 years. They're just not that good on the road. And with this Titans team that looks like it has promise, I think they'll be able to get this kind of win to kind of show that they're still moving in the right direction. So that's like Tennessee here -3 and Tennessee straight up. Next game, Packers over Falcons. I do want to say for the Cincinnati Bengals, they're the first team since the 1939 Eagles to not score a touchdown at home in their first 2 games. And for Cincinnati, they fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Zampese, which was fair because you cannot have an offense that good and still not be able to score a touchdown. And, unfortunately for the Bengals, I've heard about the Kaepernick aspects. They want Kaepernick. But this Bengals offense, Tyler Eifert's hurt, and they're playing a Packers team that even if the Bengals on paper that have an offense that could score points on the Packers, that Packers defense is angry, they're frustrated, they're back home, and Aaron Rodgers is going to light up that Bengals defense. Even though Jordy has a quad injury, and Randall Cobb has a shoulder MRI, and Mike Daniels has, a hamstring injury that's minor, I just think the Packers are just going to, do what they do best. They have Ty Montgomery as their running back who scored 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games, or his first 5 career rushing touchdowns. And Aaron Rodgers threw 300 touchdowns in the game against Atlanta. Coincidentally enough, to Ty Montgomery. He became the fastest quarterback to reach that milestone in only 144 games. Peyton Manning and Dan Marino reached that milestone at 157 games. And I don't have faith in the Bengals. I trusted the Bengals last week against a rookie quarterback, against 20 guys that were injured, against 1 starting tight end, and a defense that did its job. What did Andy Dalton do and the offense do? Showed me absolutely nothing. The Packers defense, they have a decent front, not as talented as Houston and Baltimore's, and they definitely have a secondary that can't match it. But with just the confidence and just the ebbs and flows of Andy Dalton, I just have no confidence that he'll be able to make throws against the Packers defense. I think the Packers defense against the Bengals, will put it this way, they're not going to look as good as they did against Seattle, but they're not going to look as bad as they did against Atlanta, and that should be enough for the Packers to get a nice 9 to 10-point win against the Bengals. So that's like Green Bay here, -9, and Green Bay straight up. Chiefs over Chargers. The Los Angeles Chokers showed up again. The Chargers are now 9-18 in their last 27 one-score games. The Chargers have missed their last four game-winning or tying field goals, and Phillip Rivers, since he's come in the league, has the most 3-point losses out of any quarterback with 25. And they're playing a team in Kansas City that's one of the most well-rounded and consistent teams in the NFL. They've swept them the last 2 years. Kareem Hunt has the second most scrimmage touchdowns in his first 2 games in NFL history, only behind Dutch Strendman from 1920 that had 6. You have, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Jason Verrett did not play. You have a Kansas City offensive line that, even though they lost Mitch Morse, is a decent player, but thankfully his injury is not season-ending, and it's just, I believe, a little ankle sprain, and he'll be out for a couple weeks. I think Kareem Hunt should be able to run the ball pretty effectively. I think it's going to be a good game for him. I think Alex Smith will do what Alex Smith does, and I just don't trust this Chargers team in any way that if they can put up a fight against the Chiefs defense, and even Marcus Peters had some rough moments in the game against Torrey Smith or Matt Collins or some other receivers, that the Chargers, again, the Los Angeles Chokers, will find another way to lose a close game. And anybody that takes the Chargers, you're going against hope here. It's sad to see the team like that, but when you see it over and over and over again, you have to get used to it. And that's the one thing, like, the Chargers, look, they're going to put up a fight, and I wouldn't be surprised. But they may choke it again, and I expect that against the KC team, that unlike the Chargers, they're the Kansas City closers. And even though they gave that touchdown to Aguilar, when the game's on the line, they're able to find a way most of the time to be able to close out games. So that's why I like KC here, -3, and KC straight up. Raiders over Redskins. Oakland, for the first time since 2002, is 2-0 to start a year. Michael Crabtree scored 3 touchdowns for only the second time in his career. I think the last time he did it was week 4 against us in the game in Baltimore. And Marshawn Lynch scored his first rushing touchdown since week 10 of the 2015 season. For the Redskins, it was a nice, solid game. I was, a little disappointed in the Rams' defense, but the Redskins' offense definitely showed up. And Mason Foster made a great play on a second-year quarterback. When you look at Chris Thompson, a career high in rushing yards, and for Kirk Cousins, this was only his 5th win on the road outside of the division in his career. He's only won 5 times on the road outside of his division. And I'm going to take the Raiders here. I love what the Raiders defense has done over the last 2 weeks. The Jets game, you can ignore that, fine. Not really that important. But they've won 6 straight games on the East Coast. They have Khalil Mack. They're going up against the Redskins offensive line that's a little banged up. I think Morgan Moses went down, which if he's out for the game, that's big. That's one of the better interior offensive linemen. And I just trust this Oakland team very much to play another, spectacular, well-rounded game against a Washington team that, for the most part, have been more lucky than good. And just against the Raiders team that's been clicking, I just really trust this Raiders team to go on another East Coast trip into Washington and pull out another, solid, impressive performance against a Washington team that may surprise people. But a big Rob Kelly out, I don't think Chris Thompson's going to have the game he did. And with that, and you're going to have Pryor, Josh Dotson didn't do anything again, and I think Jordan Reed going against Joseph and Nelson, I think he's not going to have as much of an impact in that game as he did against the Rams. So that's why I like Oakland here -3 and Oakland straight up. And finally, the Monday night game, Cowboys over Cardinals. Dak Prescott threw his first pick 6 of his career. Ezekiel Elliott ran for the lowest amount of rushing yards in his career, 9 carries for 8 yards, and which was shocking to me. And they had their first 25-point loss since Week 10 of the 2013 season when they lost to New Orleans, I believe, 49-21. And I believe that was the game they gave up the NFL record for first downs in the game. But here is why I'm taking Dallas. The Arizona Cardinals, one of my favorite teams with my favorite coach, just look pathetic. The fact that they went to overtime against a Jacoby Brissett-led Colt team tells you everything you have to know about how bad this team is and how lucky they got that Tyrann Mathieu made a big play. I also want to congratulate Phil Dawson. He get this first game-winning field goal since Week 17 of the 2015 season. But yeah, that's the thing. Could the Cardinals give them a little bit of fight? Sure, but here's the thing. Here's what you know about the Cardinals. They have a more talented offense, though they have not as good a defense as the Giants or the Broncos. In terms of, they don't have the 2 corners, they have 1. They have 1 good pass rusher, not 2, and they have really 1 good safety instead of 2. And when you look at, Arizona, I just haven't been impressed. And Dallas, they should be able to rebound, and Carson Palmer looks washed up. And even if, Carson Palmer can play decent enough, I just expect Carson Palmer to make one big mistake that makes me angry that they lost the game. So it should be an interesting game. Cardinals have not as talented defense as Denver and New York, and they have a little bit more of a talented offense in terms of pieces that John Brown can play compared to the Broncos, but they're not as talented as the Giants. But just with Dallas' consistency and their motivation, they should be able to go into Arizona and get a big win to help move their season forward. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube prognosticators page to see guys like Gio Knows, Hatbox, Nation, Billy B, Bridgewater's Finest, Logan Schiff, Luca, and all these other great Half Moon's picks, and all these other great prognosticators, Andrew Warren. And that's it. So until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until then, so long.